Mute all. Still mute. Good evening, everyone. My name is Suresh Kumar Purapati. I am the captain for BRATS. That what was you just saw. One second, sorry. You just saw our Delhi launch, BRATS. This actually happened last year in the month of August. So with 300 mentors now, we are trying to create a platform which is BRATS. BRATS is Brands Research Advertising Technology, Brands Research Advertising Technology and Strategies. So we are mainly focusing on industry and institutional connect from the step of your campus till you reach your corporate. We want to be there in each and every step, and as a aid, whether it is your projects or a mentorship or internship, or maybe tomorrow's your recruitment. So BRATS is taking all types of steps to build the education standards and your future also. So that's the overall matter. Today we have very special guest Esha from Nepa India. I request our navigator Urvi to give a detailed introduction. Over to Urvi. Thank you so much. Urvi?
I think she's on mute. I see you mute on.
No, she can't.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, Urvi,
Hello?
we all hear you.
Okay. Thank you, Suresh. Good evening, all. We have with us today Esha. Esha, Brats, welcome you. So before we begin, let me just give you a quick brief about what Esha's journey is till now. So Esha Nagar is Managing Director for Nepa India. She leads the country hat for Nepa India. She is based in Mumbai and overseas Nepa research and client development efforts across range of vertical industry, leading consumer science, marketing, and research. Over her career, Esha has worked in both the research-focused consulting side and business development space in the industry. Her work cuts across multiple verticals like consumer, retail panels, digital-focused solution, path to purchase understanding, and media effectiveness. In this session, she will cover the journey of consumer science, relevance in today's cluttered ecosystem, and what future holds for us. Welcome, Esha.
Thank you so much, Urvi. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you, Suresh and Urvi, for the invite. Actually, I'm pretty excited to take this today evening. Just want to make sure I'm audible perfectly. All right. If I can just get a couple of eyes and guesses in the chat box, that will really help. Or if you guys can just speak up. Okay, great. Thumbs up work. All right.
Yes.
So welcome everybody. I think some housekeeping rules before we go into the presentation. Please feel free to speak up. The topic is such as consumer science, and I am very happy that the R call research focus, is sitting in BRATS name itself. So we are focusing on the R, which is the second alphabet. It's a little heavy topic. I have tried to make it as interesting, given it's like a evening midweek. Let's interact with each other and see how we can make this actually work. With that, I'll just share my screen, and I think a couple of mutes if that's possible, because I can hear myself as an echo. So let me know once you guys can see the screen, okay? Okay, great. I get a thumbs up from Urvi. Perfect. So we are talking about consumer science and its changing avatars in the journey of marketing. Wherever we have started on consumer science from, I am understanding that the group who's joined to listen to my session on a Tuesday is interested about the topic and either has at least some base knowledge, a foundational knowledge, or is just intrigued and curious. And curious is the word which forms the core of consumer science, because it is all about having that knack of curiosity, having that knack in terms of knowing the unknown and exploring what really lies behind what you already know. Sorry, I actually can hear myself echo. I think it's Urvi. Okay. So what are we going to cover? We'll first of all focus on what consumer science is, and then I'll go into a little bit of a heavy duty stuff, which is types of researches, how perhaps you can take this up as a career opportunity, how you can embed it as part of your normal workways in whatever function you are. With that, what is research? Now, one thing is for sure, it's super essential. You guys might actually say that I could just Google it and that's research. I mean, there is so much of information present all around us. So many webinars, including this, where so much of information is being thrown to us. I already know my stuff, so I could just perhaps Google it. A brand could just look it up on the internet. The second one is I can refer to past researches done by very able people. There is enough research already done in the industry, and I could always look at it as a reference, right? The third one is I can look at the info that I have and arrive at some conclusions. Now, all these 1, 2, 3 of research are actually called something, because research is primarily divided into two buckets. And I just said the word actually, which defines one of the buckets. Does anyone on the group would want to take a take on what 1, 2, and 3 types of researches are called in consumer science?
Secondary research, ma'am.
Sorry?
Secondary research?
Yes. So secondary research is the answer. So there are two types, which is primary research and secondary research, and something that you do on your own without, like actually commissioning or someone else doing it for you is largely secondary. You look up to sources, whatever is existing. And that brings me to the fourth point, which is a brand could also, just give me 1 second, the brand could commission something specific to answer your business question. That is primary research. And the consumer science belt that we are focusing on today caters to primary, which is the things that brands commission, the marketers commission, or any business would commission to understand more about a business question. Everyone understands business question and the meaning of it. Just feel free to keep on asking queries there. Now, there are different ways in which we can define ourselves, either as a firm, a industry, a topic. My personal favorite is this. It's very simple. Consumer science is about making sense of consumers and markets. As simple as that. In any business or in any form, you would be trying to answer two things largely, which is what the viewers or consumers are up to, or what a particular territory or market is up to. So that's how I love to define business of research as. What does it mean? It means underlying consumer sentiment, which is what we are thinking. Second, any maxims which define category or TG. Any takers on what TG means? It's one of the most favorite words.
Target group.
Yeah. So target group, which is the essence of any research or consumer science piece, that is what we are trying to understand in terms of maxims. Third being drivers of choice. Fourth is any novel practices in the make, any trends that perhaps could be changing. And the last one, which is trends and profiles or personas. In such a heterogeneous country that we live in, or any heterogeneous market which has different layers and components, what are different profiles and personas that a brand could cater to? Because for every industry and every brand, the persona types, they just vary. And specifically in today's context, when the situation is too uncertain, things are changing in the media world. I mean, we all know that the app world is changing. So many things of the old are being banned. So many things are coming in new. So thus, it becomes extremely important to focus on these 5 pieces. Any questions on this slide before I move ahead? Okay, looks like we are good. We have a pretty intelligent group with us. So going on further, that's another favorite word of agency or research, okay, which is called recommendation. And importance of consumer science, as much as I explain, skipping of research, either in secondary, tertiary, or primary layers, is not recommended when we talk about building brands, when we talk about launching services. So it's the interdisciplinary service of different methods, but a very, very vital at heart. Also, I sometimes use the term that it's the most unglamorized function of the whole branding and advertising chain. It's not a front end, it's more a behind the scenes work which is happening in terms of how theories could form, how certain decisions could be taken. It's not the front end hero, but definitely a vital one which makes those decisions substantial and strong enough. One very important thing that market research does is that it helps in avoiding preset notions or linear thinking for marketers. Now, imagine you are running a brand. You will already know that this is how I would want the field to be. This is what I would want the product line to be. This particular person I would want to be as a celebrity or the brand ambassador. This is how my expansion plan is. I know it all. So a lot of times when you are running a brand, things are so close to heart and mind that you need facts. In fact, there is a saying that, okay, if you have facts, show that to me. Otherwise, just listen to me. So the facts are so crucial. It brings in the analytic belt. It's a great balance to the fluidity of creative, which is the right hand side of the brain versus the left hand, which completely runs by numbers and analysis. And that's what exactly that research is answering. Some kinds of things that often happen if you hear out more by the gut in terms of decisions. You could be too close to the product and hence you might have already, like a preset bias, which I just talked about. Second is you go by, we know what consumers want, and your decisions could thus be just by your gut, which is let's go by our gut, which is the third piece. Okay. Now, this one I particularly struggle with, being a good listener, but by the virtue of profession, you have to be so good at the art of listening in terms of what others are saying rather than saying, rather than giving decision basis what Esha is thinking. So that's how we have to look at research problems. The windows that I could see, like a Ashwin or a Sakshi could be thinking so and so about a particular situation, but it's not about what they think. It's about a minimum sample. It's about what is representative of a population, of a universe, in terms of giving those directions. So the art of listening is super crucial in market research, and then decoding and making sense of data if there are tech enthusiasts on the group, making sensible outcomes and converting data into information is one core job of market research. Yeah. So the first theme in terms of the art of listening also is that even though market research does not guarantee 100% results, it does substantially minimize the risk of failure in the market, because you know that your decision is coming on the base of certain facts and certain research that you have already done, you already are risk averse. The second one is that consumers are not always sure of their thoughts or opinions. If you guys read a bit about neuro and the new age techniques on consumer research, you would know that the way a human mind perceives things and the way I do things, it's completely different. For all you know, your content library seen on Netflix will be completely different in terms of what you will say in front of your parents, for the sake of a better example, right? It could be completely different in terms of what you would be propagating in your friends groups, which comes out of a peer pressure. So when you are in the business of research, you have to also keep these things in mind, which is the consumers might not even be able to articulate. मैं कुछ सोच रहा हूँ, but मैं कुछ कह रहा हूँ, it's completely different. So the expressions, what they are writing in terms of the answers, all that comes into play, and that is the real challenge when we are working on the research projects. The last one is very dear to me, which is a good researcher knows how to extract deep rooted beliefs in consumers. If you are one of those persons who have you guys heard the term root cause analysis, which is asking why behind every hypothesis that you say? If we like, if I have to take an example of a root cause analysis, I started the webinar 5 minutes late. Why did that happen? I was waiting for everyone. Why did that happen? Because I wanted tech to be perfect. Why did that happen? Because we wanted a fantastic webinar. That's called root cause analysis, which is going into the whys till you are at the root of the cause. And that's what we do with the third point, which is you have to go to the root of the cause. You can't just believe in the consumer just by what they're saying. Do raise a hand if you have any questions. Otherwise, I'll keep on moving ahead, and I'll just feel that you all are getting all of it.
There's one hand raised by Ekta. Yes, Ekta, you can please.
Hi, Ekta. Yes.
Hello, ma'am.
Hi.
Ma'am, my question is, like, as you mentioned 3 points, and then how this art of listening will help, because as you told, how we perceive and how we do things both are different at same
Correct.
point of time. So how a market research will understand the root cause of the consumer?
Okay, so that's a good question. You should look at art of listening more from a literal sense, which is just spatial hearing and understanding what you're just hearing, plain say. Like, Ekta, you asked me a question. One is I could just hear it out. Second is I could listen to why perhaps this question is something that is coming to your mind, or what you actually mean by it. So a very conscious, active hearing is in the sense listening. So listen is just not by the hearing means, but also understanding the core of a particular question or a core behind a particular consumer sentiment. How we do it is something which is coming up in the further slides, because it's not a fit for all answer. There are different techniques through which you do it. There are different methods through which you can understand the consumer better. And I'll take that up as we go ahead in the further slides. Does that sound okay?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, but that was a very good question, and we park it and we take Ekta's question ahead as we look at different techniques. As I said, it's not a one size fits all ecosystem. The needs are very different. You would have heard these two terms if you have been ever curious about research: quantitative and qualitative. What are these? Quantitative comes from the word quant. Very straightforward. If you guys are preparing for, you guys have prepared for management, quantitative abilities, numbers, plain maths. Yes, I see people raising hands for that. So it's plain maths. It has to be quantified, backed up by data. So that is what quantitative research is, which tells you what percentage of consumers are thinking so and so. I'll just take an example. Say I was doing a research on what is the type of variant that a particular target group likes. A quantitative answer to this research would be 25% of the target group liked variant A. So there is a solid number that comes in. So in terms of a basic understanding, quantitative is all about the measurement and putting a value attached. Now the second W, which forms a very important part of the curious kittens in research, is why. So that why gets answered through qualitative. which is why do these people think about that variant? What was happening in my mind that I favored towards variant A? Was it the taste? Was it the fragrance? What was it, just the name, or was it, I'm a big fan of say, so for the lack of a better example, I'm a great fan of charcoal based face washes. So what is that reason that led for a person to vote for a particular entity? That is all that qualitative does. So the two broad techniques are qual and quantitative. In quantitative, you get a base to begin research, and in qualitative, you try to deep dive into research. Yeah. So those are two techniques. Now there could be different types of research, and as I go ahead in this presentation, don't get confused by the different names or the types of research or the ways research could be taken, because the left hand side talks about methods, the right hand side talks about the audience for whom the research could perhaps be happening. So there are these two very, you guys would be very familiar with these two terms, which is B2B and B2C. Most of the researches which are taken up by the firms, when a firm is engaging to do business for a firm, it becomes business to business research. It is very prevalent in the heavy industry sector. A lot of NGOs, a lot of governments say, if we were doing a project for the government, say for example, to understand the impact on employment, and you as a researcher or a body as a researcher takes that up, it forms part of B2B, because the entity which is getting impacted is a business at the end of the day. The example of B2C would be that a brand wanted to understand what impact is happening on consumers, or what a consumer has to think, and because the category also involves consumer, something that a consumer can buy. Like an example quoted here is of one of the FMCG companies where a person could purchase that product. Thus it becomes B2C research. So I would really, maybe throw a challenge at you guys that once you go back, maybe look at different examples on the internet or otherwise, and try to club different situations into B2C and B2B. It's quite fun how things actually are on the crossroads. There is, as clear as they seem, there could be things potentially falling into both the entities.
I have a doubt.
Yeah.
So are qualitative and quantitative so are they together? I mean, when a research happens, are they replaceable, or do they have to happen together?
That's a very intelligent question, actually, because they are not replaceable. So it's not like you can replace one to the other. It completely depends upon the business objective at hand. So I'll give you an example of a business objective and a problem. We use both qual and quant in a lot of projects. We use only qualitative in certain projects, and we are completely okay to also do only quantitative in certain. Now, why do we choose these could be completely dependent upon the answer that we are seeking. In a case where the brand would want to understand the matrix, which is just the numbers, but also understand the deeper reasons of why this generally happens when you're building communication and campaigns.
Yeah.
Okay, which is what is going in the minds of consumer. What are they liking about a particular brand? We often go for both qual and quantitative methods. Say, I just have to understand the percentage of people in entire India who love BRATS.
Sure.
The percentage only, okay? That's qualitative.
Would you say, sorry for the interruption. I want to understand what would a number solve and not the reason of it. Say, why would you need just the number part of it if you don't buy?
Yeah, that's because there is a very another favorite thing that comes into play, which is the length of an interview. These things are being collected, okay, from different people.
Yeah.
In case of quantitative, you can capture multiple levels of information from a large sample size.
Yeah.
Okay. In qualitative, you can get more depth of information from a smaller sample size.
Right.
If you were to imagine a T-shaped structure, okay, imagine the vertical T going into in-depth, which is quant covering a larger sample with multiple topics.
Makes sense.
So that's why, it's not a suit fit situation, and you have to take calls basis different situations and hand.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. Now moving ahead, apart from quantitative, qualitative, and different kinds of, like the audience that we are catering to, in terms of whom we are doing the research for, you will further come across a lot of other things which are on the rise today. One of the favorite things is big data. I mean, even that's part of research. And some of the new age things in terms of the facelift and the changing avatars for market research are these, which is big data studies. When there is a huge database already sitting with a brand, which they can use. And there are a lot of firms and consulting groups who invest their time in understanding that. A lot of analytics and modeling happens there. The second piece is a lot of artificial intelligence led methods. I'm sure there are a lot of AI enthusiasts in this group. And the normal means of surveying are today replaced by chatbots because they are replacing humans in a lot of things. And research industry is taking a huge advantage of this lever which is there at our disposal, which is AI led methods in terms of surveying. The third one is behavioral data. Now, this one connects to the question that Ekta had asked earlier. She had asked, how can you listen when you are surveying? Another form of looking at research is claimed, which is when you ask someone, I ask you a question and you answer. That becomes a claim because you have given a response to my question. Okay, so this is very important. So please pay attention. It's one very important piece which like separates the modern methods and the traditional methods. So the claim data is when something is asked and the answer is given by the respondent to the person whom you're questioning. That becomes one entity. The second entity is the behavioral data or the passive data. This is what you guys are doing. This is what a person does on their app. Like you would have seen Google remarketing happening at a lot of places where you would have done something and then you get immediate, very relevant suggestions. What is that? That is understanding of your behavior. That's understanding of your preferences. I mean, your Instagram feed and my Instagram feed is completely different because it suit fits my behavior and my patterns of consumption, both in terms of viewership, both in terms of products. And this field of research completely is called passive data measurement and also behavioral sciences, where I'm not asking, but either through some technology, either through some methods that where I have a panel of people who have agreed to share information, I'm capturing that and then making sense out of it. Does that sound all right? Which actively involves listening and not asking. The last one, which is also a beautiful practice, is neuroscience. As I said, the articulation. Now, one form is that you ask a question to someone, someone says whatever they have to it, and you keep on articulating and making sense of that data. Where if the person is too opinionated, perhaps what I'm thinking as a perception versus what I'm saying is going to match. The second is I'm thinking something else and saying something else. Neuroscience works beautifully there because it tells there's something called as implicit and explicit information. What we are thinking and what we are perceiving, you are able to gauge basis the energies inside the brain. And it's quite fancy. You should look it up. If I take neuroscience, it will become a separate like a session altogether. There is a proper gear which is used to understand it, and there are norms. It's a very scientific method which takes the help of our brains in terms of how we are thinking, in terms of articulating that information. So these 5 layers are the new avatars that a lot of research firms like us and other amazing brands that are there in the business of research are adhering to. And this might also be of interest to the group if you ever would want to pursue something in market research or add on as a layer to your current existing work. Going further, what I've done is in the next slide, just giving a bit of a context before I move there for everybody. I have broken it down into a case study. What happens when a research brief comes in to an agency? What is the difference between the business objective versus research objective versus what we are giving back? So please be with me in that case study. Please ask any questions. If it sounds too technical, just raise a hand.
Ekta has a query, I believe. Yes, Ekta.
Hi, Ekta, tell me.
Ma'am, like as you told, like while taking the feedback from the consumer, so you call it's a claim data. So from how, like, every consumer have different thoughts and perception about it. So at what segment and how many areas we are going to target, and on what basis we are like going to select the product. Actually,
Okay.
this is very, I know, very wide, but I didn't get it this one.
Sure. So the question definitely is wide, because that basically means market research for dummies, complete, like, understanding of the process. But I'll try to cover a couple of points there. One thing that we keep in mind is the target group that I was hinting at. So to nail a survey, it's very important to define that target group that you're going to. By statistical proven methods, a minimum sample size of 13 quantitative is good enough to predict for a particular target group, for a particular entity or a category or a task at hand. For example, if I have, say, hair care as a category, and I would want to tell a brand in terms of directional responses what is happening in Mumbai as a market, for that particular target group, which is consumer of hair care category, for Mumbai as a market, I would definitely want to minimum base look at 30. Now, say if the firm says, I want to understand the age wise preferences and differences also, I'll add another 30 and 30 if there are 3 age groups. I'm just telling you a general rule of thumb. It completely depends upon the granularity of information that you are seeking. The other thing that could come up is, now the firm says that I also want to look at 4 more regions. You will keep on increasing that sample when it becomes representative of the population that you are looking at to represent. In terms of information, you have to keep in mind when you are looking at claim-based surveys, the length of the interview, the attention span of people is very less. Like, if I ask you to give me complete attention for 30 minutes of a questionnaire, you might, by the end of the questionnaire, it will be, we call it death by the questionnaire, by the way. So you have to be you have to be very intelligent with the time that you use in the questionnaire by asking intelligent questions. So thus you have to focus at the task at hand. Create smart questionnaires in terms of covering the information. I know your question, the question that you asked involves a lot apart from target group, apart from length of interview, but that I think would be suitable if you would want to understand more information around how research is actually done, and I could send across certain links to study there.
Sure, ma'am. Thank you.
Ma'am, hello, ma'am.
Hi, Indrajit. Hi, how are you? Tell me.
I'm good, ma'am. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Yeah.
In your previous slide, you said that we should avoid linear thinking at the most, but there should be a protocol. Like, linear thinking is about more about the protocols. So there will be certain rules and regulation which should be followed. And I guess critical thinking is something we should be avoided in case of consumer science. You should not use your own brain, rather protocol should be followed, which would be better than the bias.
I agree.
So how these two things contradict each other now?
So the usage of linear in the previous slide, take it from a horse vision perspective, a single-minded approach in terms of things. And the way we are bringing in critique or research is by looking at different levers. So do not go by the one-track thinking mind, rather focus on multiple things to arrive at a decision. So look at the linear there from that perspective. Does that help?
Got it, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay. So coming to one of the case studies I've prepared, this is purely for illustrative purposes. This is something you will always see when you're looking at a presentation of a researcher. When they present data, they always say this is illustrative. So there could be a lot of things and terms and conditions apply in terms of answering a case study. Say a business objective. Now this is how generally research briefs come. Okay. Now a brand will approach and say, I want to increase market share of a shampoo, brand A, through launch of a new exotic range, which is a line extension of brand A. So I have a brand and I also want to create a sub brand line of it. This is their question. So the first task for a researcher is to convert it into a research question, because this is a business question. What the business would want to, arrive at. The way we look at the research objective is we will translate it into, okay, I have to test this. That basically means I need a concept. I need a stimuli to test. So I would want to evaluate the new concept, whatever their new positioning is, in form of a script or a stimuli or whatever I'll get from them. Do a benchmark exercising against brand A, understand the aspects about the extension that are liked and those that can be used for product communication. So I'm just giving you an example how a business objective is converted into a research question in terms of what you are trying to understand as a researcher. The next step is designing the approach and looking at possible methods of data collection. This is where all you're thinking of whether I'll be using. Now, this is a primary research brief, okay, where we already know that the client would want to do a research with us. Designing the approach and data collection is where you put your minds across whether I use quantitative or qualitative, whether I use passive metering or whether I use straightforward claim-based answers. Now, this at a superficial level looks okay to be answered through. I'll go to a group of people, I'll take the number of people who are giving me a particular responses and I'll give a yes or a no to the brand basis, whatever comes out. So in this case, for example, also you decide whether you would want to do the research online or offline. So the channel or the medium of research is also very important depending upon, I mean, who will tell me? It's the target group, which is if the target group is more approachable online, you will do an online survey. If you think the channel is going to be more offline, a lot of times, a lot of elderly people, for example, or your, there's the socio-economic classification, the lower, the ones who are not connected to, say, internet in particular, maybe offline is going to suit in terms of a methods of research. So in this case, as you see on the slide, you can read it. The quantitative methodology was used, an online link was shared. This was done in the key markets for brand A. The respondents were a mix of current users, people who are trying, and non-users. Now, these things generally come, and these are the questions that we ask when working with a firm or a client, that what are the things that you want to focus on? Do you only want to take this opinion from the people who are using your brand A? Do you also want to acquire some of the people who are non-users towards this brand extension? So all these things are discussed at the debriefing stage when we receive the first business objective. Okay. So don't get confused by the terms with respect to the brand, because that's completely case to case basis. After doing the study, collecting the information, what needs to go from research is a recommendation, a direction in terms of whether they should be going ahead with it or whether they should not be going ahead with it. Now, you are not able to see the complete research here, but in this particular case, there was enough evidence to say do not even go with the brand A extension line, because it was not adding anything to, think about it. What could be some of the things why brand wanted a second line altogether? Any answers from the group there? Why would you want to do this? You have a great brand and now you want another line.
Maybe there's an untapped category. Say if it's a shampoo, maybe you want to go into the dandruff category, or say you want to go into the dry hair or something like that.
So generally that's the first specific one, which is you want to go beyond your low hanging fruit and you want to add on some new users. In this case in particular, what we found out was that it was actually cannibalizing the core brand, which is the users who would like that brand were actually getting shifted to the line extension instead of getting more, like new users. So thus the recommendation was, no, it's going to harm the brand more. So don't go with the second line altogether. Instead, look at what the consumers are seeing and improve in the current brand only to get a better incremental and to go beyond your current set of users. It might again look very simple, but there is a lot of data that goes into that recommendation. It could be some qualitative layers at this stage. So actually the question that you asked, if the brand would want to know more whys at C stage, that what I want to know what exactly the consumer said. That's when we would go for a little more qual and exploratory methods of research.
Excuse me, ma'am. I would like to put up a question.
Yes.
Thank you. So, majority of the times, the research happens pre-product development, right, ma'am?
No. So that's a general belief that research is pre-facto before taking decisions. There are three different types in it's called the product life cycle, which is before the product comes into the scene, which is largely around creating innovation, understanding concepts and like products. The second piece, Ashwin, is once the product is launched, a lot of marketing effort goes. So a lot of research and understanding that marketing efforts also comes into play, because abhi brand ban gaya. So before you were understanding the product and the entity, Once it's launched, you are now trying to answer how many people know my brand, how many people love my brand, what can I do to garner more eyeballs towards my brand. So all those things come once the product is launched. Also further ahead, it doesn't stop there. Once you become an established brand, then a lot of customer experience research happens, which is now people already love it. Like like give me an example of any iconic brand that you love.
Harley Davidson.
Okay, great. That's a very good like brand that you have quoted. Say maybe it's on the top matrix of love in terms of bike lovers. Okay, then comes the last stage, which is customer experience. How many people who love the bike, what is their experience like, what can I do further to retain them? So it's about acquiring, then building the brand, and then retaining also. So it's not just pre-product launch, it's also the marketing cycle and also the post-facto experience of the user.
Sorry to interrupt, ma'am. Is the part is of data analytics also, right? The
Yes.
part.
Yes, it's so data analytics is like a twin sister to market research. It's very well fitted there, and analytics, as opposed to the primary research that we are talking here, involves a lot of science in terms of models and statistical methods, but it's very much sitting under the umbrella of consumer science itself.
So how you differ that? Means you told twins, right? So you need a difference, right?
So so when I say a twin, analytics largely lies on preset statistical methodologies and modeling techniques. However, this could be straight from a simple maths of percentages. So whenever the term analytics is being used, you are already using certain, say, regression on it. Just talking about some of the systems. So that is where the whole part of data analytics begins.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, I'm moving ahead. Now, consumer science is evolving not just in terms of its avatars, but also, let me look at this current situation, the COVID situation that we are all in, right? So it also adds on to a lot of confusion, a lot of clutter for the market. And thus, there are unexpected routine shifts happening in consumer behavior. Something that was okay maybe by February, post March, it's completely changed. So the way brands are thinking, the way they are looking at their marketing, the way they are looking at their consumer understanding, it's going through a lot of shift because of the unexpected shifts in the consumer behavior. The second is it is leading to a lot of new challenges. If I had thought about this way of marketing, now what do I, now how do I retweak it in the post-COVID era? Whenever that happens, the third one is it's also going business beyond usual. So in market research, a lot of the clients who would commission research with market research firms, they are looking for something beyond BAU, something that they are not able to see. It's called the uncommon sense of consumer, which is something that the common sense might not even tell. And thus, business beyond usual is where the focus of consumer science today is. So in most of our suggestions these days, we follow a recipe of compassion and innovation, because we are seeing empathy being the topmost theme in the COVID era, where people have become, like our emotions are on the rise. If you're happy, you're super happy. If you are sad about a situation, you're super sad. So by those logics, we also at our end, while doing these consumer science work, we have to be extremely cognizant of the fact in terms of the ecosystem that surrounds us. Like a pre-COVID versus the current system is completely different, and we generally recommend a recipe of compassion and innovation while suggesting a lot of things these days. Then certain other trends which are shaping up the current avatar of market research are the shopping that I just talked about. I think we covered all of this. The purchases centered around basic needs. There was a premium segment or a mass segment earlier. Today, it's largely focused on essentials. Digital is something which is commanding the scene altogether. Content, for example, was being consumed more. Today, it's being created more as a parallel. So thus, there are as much as content creators. I would say content creation is becoming almost an entertainment method. So thus the way marketers and brands are engaging with their target group is also changing. They are trying to involve them more and more as part of their brand positioning and also their branding efforts. The virtual workforce, which is the new normal of work from home, all of these things are also impacting a lot in terms of the industry, the way things are changing, the way trends are being forecasted. If you look at a person, we used to talk about roti kapra makan, then it became roti kapra makan internet. Now it's roti kapra makan internet content, basics, essentials, my health, hygiene. So in a nutshell, the basics and the core things that define the consumer are changing, and that is leading to a lot of things, the way research would respond to it. I think with that, I'm coming almost to the end. We are doing very good on time. We will then open for questions. I want to leave the group with one thought before we open for more questions on this topic, which is staying curious and keeping learning is something that market research is based on. And get your attention to this line, which is strive to be more interested than interesting. So that sums up, if you love market research and data science and making sense out of numbers, this is something that I would leave the group with. And Urvi, I think we have done a fantastic job in terms of keeping it well on time. So I'm opening up for questions now, and make it more interactive at this point in time.
Hello, ma'am.
Hi. Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to put up one more question about focus groups and in-person interviews, as we have not talked about them.
Yes.
So focus groups, basically we have a group of people. It would be like one observing the other. There would be the the distraction of peer pressure and all.
Yeah.
And basically that's how they tend to buy products. What I mean to say is, when we consider focus groups, the accuracy of survey would be more high, right? Or what do you think on that?
So just to tell the group on Ashwin's question, he's talking about focus group discussions and in-depths. They form two parts of qualitative technique methods, which is the way of surveying and conducting qualitative understanding. So in a focus group discussion, what happens is there are many focus group discussions and focus group discussions also, just as a layer. You will get 8 people. It's almost like those group discussion interviews that we give in MBA exams, okay, after clearing the interview. I mean, as simple as that, to give a parallel. In a FGD versus the in-depth, we choose between the two, depending upon the situation. Now, if I were to tell you, Ashwin, because you gave the example of bikes, I'm assuming you are an enthusiast. If I were to place you with 7 more people and ask you to talk about bikes, if you are extremely passionate about the topic, no matter of peer bias will influence you. You will have your opinion, you will talk about it, you will put it forward. In fact, it might actually become a friendly banter where you're talking and engaging. So if the topic at hand is not too sensitive, if the topic at hand where the perception versus what you say is not going to differ as much, we would prefer focus group discussions, where we think a lot of insights can actually happen by the virtue of community. I mean, people love to talk about serials, for example, shows. I watch something and we'll put them together, they'll talk about it, we'll get a lot of insights. But the categories in which I think influence can happen, say I'm doing a research on a premium skincare brand, chances are that I might not be open in a group and I would start preferring a particular brand which my majority of the audience is focusing at. I would rather go for in-depth in that case. So it completely depends upon how the group and people are going to react, and the experience that we would have garnered to define between the two. There is another piece apart from FGDs and in-depths. We sometimes bring in people who love a particular thing versus hate a particular thing together also. That makes for interesting discussions altogether, because you get an anti and a favored, you get the mix of both. So it's one of the types of the FGDs.
In extension to this, once like we're coming to big data, we're coming to AI-led, innovations and all. What do you think will be missing from focus groups? What do you think will be missing from in-depth interviews? Or are we gaining something? Are we going close to accuracy?
Okay, so I don't think that anything any means of data that I have cited in a holistic method is good enough to answer questions. So in research, generally, thus we follow hybrid means. We depend a lot on exploratory plus claim-based data plus a lot of behavioral or the big data that we are talking about. What a person says and the face-to-face essence is not going to go as much as tech keeps on improving. So technology is taken as the enabler by market research, not as a substitute.
Okay.
So it's still important what you think as a person, layered with what your behavior data would be. We combine it together, fuse it together. That's another field altogether, which is the data fusion, which is what you are saying, claiming, and what you are consuming. But nothing is replacing anything, and if something is missing in qualitative, then a lot also gets missed in big data because it doesn't tell a lot of why.
Yeah. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Ma'am,
Hi.
I have a doubt.
Yeah, hi. Tell me.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, my question is, if customer, like every time customer mindset changes from, like right now, if they have something, other time they have something else. So, like, if as a company, if few people are going for market research and they already told these things they are facing off, and and the data has collected, and company has come up with the new idea with their fulfilling their needs and everything,
Yeah.
and on after that, if the consumer shifted to some other brand and he is already getting the same features which he is already looking for, then how the same company, those who already come up with the fulfilling their needs so that they can target the market and they can capture more. So like how company retain those customers back, like I just.
So, okay, your question is very tough, not because I can't answer, but it's because, again, it takes a lot of things. Because if there was a straight answer, then a lot of brands would always remain number one. It's almost like in a class, a student is coming first and someone did better. And then what will the first comer now do? Keep on improving, right? So, that's the answer to your question. One, the bestest of the brands who continue to be at the top positions, they continuously keep on improving their processes, keeping the pulse with the consumer. So thus they would invest in a lot of tracked studies. Now that is another way of looking at research, okay, which is trended data versus one point in time data. So to keep pulse of the consumer, a lot of tracks generally are in place through which the brands come to know how the consumer pulse is shifting. And of course, it could be a number two, number three game once in a while. But by improving customer experience, by investing on promotions, by investing on maybe improving their branding or marketing efforts or improving the quality, the matrix keeps on changing. So it's a on the job continuous process improvement method that brands have to follow, because there is no like straight answer to becoming suddenly brand one back if you have become brand two.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, ma'am, I have a question.
Yes. Hi, Anand. Tell me.
Hi. Yeah. So I'm considering a case where the market is not very welcoming or the public is still not aware of a product. Like, for example, back in the 60s, if we would consider that we would do payments electronically, then most
Yeah.
of them would be, not
Yeah.
very sure about it. So where does this unknown factor or risk factor considered in research? Is there any methodologies for that as such?
So there are a lot of methodologies there. In fact, in research, one is people know about categories, and today we are living in a time where categories are categories are being created almost on a daily basis. Like look at
Okay.
education and technology, something that was not there and now it's on a hyperdrive. So these categories and needs which keep on getting created,
Correct.
or say
Exactly.
the example of a vegetable wash which came into existence during the whole the COVID situation, a category which was just not existing. In research, it is handled
Yeah.
by a lot of innovation techniques, profiling techniques, where the positioning or the definition of product is used to understand the consumer sentiment. It's more about if scenarios and futuristic scenarios. Rather than will you purchase, we focus on is there an intention to purchase. Are you drawing a parallel, which is you know a category, I can still ask you whether you are purchasing or not purchasing. In this case, we will have to define the concept very nicely to be able to gauge whether there would be an intention to purchase once this is released. So then basis the inclination to those ifs, that's when a brand decides whether it's a go, whether it's a no-go, whether they should invest their energies and take a risk. Of course, it comes on the banking of sizing and coming to a value also for that particular product. So there are a lot of sizing studies that are conducted. Like this product comes in, this much percentage of the audience will actually latch upon it.
Okay. So you predict the outcome and then you try it out in smaller quantities,
Yes.
like
So,
if it's going to be
yes, so
successful.
that's a separate method on research, which is predictive research. You're predicting how efficient that product possibly could be and how much audience it can cater to.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Souvik has a question, I believe.
I have a question.
Yeah. Good evening, ma'am.
Hello.
Hi, tell me. Yes.
Yeah, ma'am. I have a question, ma'am, regarding do you think, ma'am, social media platform can help the marketers in conducting the market research or survey?
They are helping as we talk. So social media platforms form two part of it. One is that social media listening practices are there in market research, where
Okay,
a lot
ma'am.
of analytics can happen through already existing data, which is the likes, comments, interactions, वो जो हम post के नीचे पूरा सब comment करते हैं, so
Yes, ma'am.
whatever, so
Yes,
that
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
treat it more like sentiment analysis, like qualitative way of working and understanding
Okay,
what
ma'am.
people are saying. The second way is often you guys would be getting surveys on say YouTube, on Instagram, on Facebook, so many times, like a simple poll.
Yes, ma'am.
So
Yes,
those
ma'am.
studies, in terms of getting answers, can be conducted. But always remember how much information can be collected through these surveys comes into play, because you are there to watch content and consume media. So thus, it's generally quick survey checks that happens through social
Okay.
media.
Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, I have another question, ma'am. In your presentation, I just missed out that AI-led method regard under the avatar, new avatar. There is a term like
Yes.
AI-led methods.
Yeah.
I just couldn't understand that. Can you please repeat that?
Sure. So in the AI-led methods, there are a lot of techniques that we are using right now.
Okay.
It forms part of either predictive analysis. I'll again give you an example. Say we have a repository or content library. I'll give you an example of content, the way firms are doing it. On content, you get recommendations in terms of
Yeah.
what you should possibly watch, right? All that is happening basis your behavior and the algorithms which have been built, that if you like this particular series, this is also something that you could possibly like. Similarly, in research,
Okay.
we use them to predict such similarities and parallels. The second piece, in which I wouldn't really say artificial intelligence, but more tech-based method, almost on the panels of AI, would be use of chatbots and surveys, where we fill in a baseline questionnaire. We build a chatbot to do this, almost like chat rooms and customer care services, to understand more. A lot of brands have inbuilt chatbots on their sites, where
Okay,
you
ma'am.
answer and they go deeper into what did you like, and this is generally done after consuming a service. So a lot of customer experience work happens through these chatbots.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, Shimona.
Yeah, ma'am. Good evening.
Hi,
My
tell me,
question
Shimona.
is, what role do AI and big data play in evacuating the gap between what the actual answer is and what we perceive through a survey?
So it bridges the gap to a great degree. Whatever the error margin is in the claim data, if we are using real and passive, meter techniques, you can be 100% sure of it. But Shimona, what comes into play is a lot of privacy measures, because as much as researchers or as companies, we would love to look at passive data. there are strict policies and rules in terms of not using that data as well. There's a fine balance in terms of what a person is willing to share versus what they're not willing to share. So though the answer is 100%, they'll bridge the gap. But are we close to that reality? No.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks.
I wanted to ask that, say, if we want to get into a market research, see, what is the process to get into it, and what is the dependency on knowing, say, coding or any of those sectors?
Okay. Okay. So in market research, there are two sides of a market research firm, or any, call it consumer science, etc. One is the client servicing layer, which is the one which is helping brands and answering and managing that relationship. And one is the operations and the delivery team, which is the backbone of any market research firm, which is analytics, which is coding, which is we use coding and programming in making our questionnaires.
Yeah.
Because that is where a lot of coding is used. That is one part of it. Now, if your strengths lie in the tech side of analytics, I am a statistics major, I love coding, or I'm from the programming background, then all of the backbone side of things of market research is something that you should look at. But if you are the one who is able to make sense of that data and the output and convert it into the brand's language and then answer to a client, then it's the client servicing side of things.
Right.
It depends upon your strength, and also it depends upon like the career path that you are following. But those are the two sides of it. It's not mandatory to learn coding to be in market research. It's not mandatory to have those sets or tech aspects, like I don't know coding, but so that's the answer. You should definitely have an understanding of how brands function if you have to do market research.
Thank you.
Shruti had put a question in a chat box, like if you can just elaborate a bit what is primary research.
Oh, whatever I talked about is primary research. So that's a good question. So primary research is when the data is collected by someone else for you for a particular business objective. When you are just doing your search basis existing sources at hand, or through research done by someone else otherwise, and you're just making your assumptions through it, that is what is called secondary data or secondary research. So primary is commissioned specifically for a business objective.
Yeah, Ekta, you have one more question. Ekta.
Hello, ma'am.
Yeah, hi.
Ma'am, my last question is brand tagline decided by STP strategy through market research before launching the product?
Yes, in a lot of ways. It could be either the existing knowledge with the brand, or it could be again a research completely started to decide a tagline. We do a lot of studies in which we understand from consumers what message or tagline do they associate with the brand. So those kind of studies are definitely taken up, but in a lot of cases legacy works in taglines, and which continues to, unless you're going for some like rechange of strategy or a retweak on brand. But research is used for those things.
Can you suggest some research papers so that I can read?
So I can actually send across a battery of links for market research, which I think Urvi can then send to the entire group in terms of referring to different links. And then you can just take it from there, whatever thought leaderships I can suggest.
Because I find it very difficult, like while framing the tagline for some, whenever we participate in some competitions and we have to frame the tagline if they're looking for some brand extension or the sub brand extension. So that's why I just asked the question. I actually find it difficult, like what consumer will perceive the word which we put there.
Yeah, you should a couple of books that you guys can, that actually comes more on the creative side, Ekta, like actually, and not too much from data. If you are finding it difficult to form taglines, because then that basically means you need to read a lot of literature and read through a lot of what is already there to be able to correctly position that tagline. but a couple of books like Steal Like an Artist and a lot of things on illustrations and the way social media functions these days. There is a lot of literature that you can read through, but it's largely on your right hand side of the brain.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excuse me, ma'am. I would like to put up one last question, don't mind.
Sure.
It was always confusing to me because let me consider a person who is in peer group. I individually like to buy a lower grade car maybe, but
Yeah.
I've got enough money and I would go to purchase a Mercedes Benz.
Yeah.
But when we see what is purchasing, it's like we don't know what the customer exactly is.
Yeah.
Not always he would be under peer pressure. Maybe he would act differently in different times.
Yeah.
So how would we bridge? How would we exactly bridge that? Because if we are considering peer pressure, we would get different results, and if you are not considering peer pressures, we would get different results.
So we build a lot of see, that's why it's a science and you need to study more about market research, because otherwise it's not so easy that we can just ask a question. The meat lies in the way we ask questions as well, because when we are doing these surveys, it's not just about what would you purchase, Ashwin. It's also then we will do parallels. Say someone who would want to purchase Mercedes Benz, I would also want to know what subscriptions he has of content. I would also want to know the brands that he's consuming for other categories, because a person doesn't behave in one single category. No, so we'll have to plan some intelligent questions to crisscross and make sense of data. So the intelligent and smart questions we planned, and we call them smart questions, to put it in a cage and then negate the thesis. Okay, in this question, the person is saying, I would want to buy Mercedes, but yahan pe he's saying he loves all free subscriptions. How does that, like talk to each other? So that's called the science of creating smart questionnaires. And we try to negate as much. Of course, we'll never be home 100%, but we try to do as much to have solid evidence and follow the whole root cause philosophy while drafting questionnaires.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay, I think we have a quorum that we don't have more questions, Urvi.
Just a little thing there, Esha.
Okay, hi Taman. Yes, tell me.
Okay, first things first, congratulations on the wonderful session.
Oh, great. I'm happy if you liked it.
Oh, I loved it. What I really loved is that it set so many young minds racing. The plethora of questions was like amazing.
Yeah.
Just too good. What I wanted actually to understand from you is that I have always been curious that since we also spoke very briefly about, post-COVID shift in preferences.
Yes. Yeah.
The consumption of content on the OTT medium has increased manifold.
Yes.
As an outsider, not really an outsider, but as a consumer and not really a research, insider, what I have noticed is that these OTT platforms are still not actively, partnering with brands for market research. Do you face that challenge as a research professional?
No, actually. So I don't face that challenge, because if I talk about Nepa in particular, that's one of the sectors that we partner the most with.
Okay.
So I agree with you there that the opening has been a little delayed.
Yeah.
Because for the group and more from market research and consumer perception basis, it's the business of creative. It's the business of creative fluidity and how themes and scripts, right? You want a normal fashion of a writer and someone who's writing songs to just flow and no data really coming into it. But as the clutter is increasing, Tamil, I mean, yourself, the content is consumption is increasing. There are too many players. Maybe at max, I have only 2 apps on my phone. So now, how do I get the pie of that content share? Means that every content piece I'm curating has to be very good.
True.
Right? Which is I have to play by quality. So to understand a lot of that, OTT players definitely invest in research across the brands which are doing market research. I would say good amount is spent in terms of understanding trailers, posters, content, etc., etc.
Oh, okay.
Just want to add, Tamil.
Yeah.
You're not that old that you're saying them are young brains, so you can also ask questions.
Pretty old, yeah. I would love to. I would take that as a compliment if you're saying I'm not that old. Tell me, yeah.
Second thing, when we're coming to OTT platforms, or it comes to esports,
Yeah.
or maybe edtech platforms,
Yes.
they are in the stage of getting into capturing the TV audiences onto OTT platforms, or maybe
Yeah.
movie audience into
Yeah.
OTT platforms. So if you ask me, the kind of money they're pouring, and which is going to be, which
Hmm.
is whoever actually pours more of money for coming up couple of years, they will only survive the business,
Correct. Yeah.
and they will only have the kind of place in the business. Because if I don't put money now, they are not making money as of now. As of now, my understanding, they are not making money.
Mhm.
But now the maximum of money is going towards the research, the
Okay.
maximum and especially it is about AI, or the kind of research in AI which is involved in what kind
Yes.
of
Yeah.
people are investing money. So the future is there, OTT, and I think the lot of technology companies in terms of AI and research is a combination of their maximum of investment today.
Yeah. In fact, that's on the back, Tamil, also that they already are sitting on a lot of data.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
OTT firms or the tech players, one, they have a lot of existing data. So understanding and making sense of big data is definitely not a challenge for the tech
just
players.
just
Yeah.
just think, Discovery is coming into OTT. So think of
Yes.
it, the kind of
Yeah.
business which they're expecting about. Getting me?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So it is all about the content in the clutter, what you are actually, making out, and how different you're coming out, and especially the accurate numbers. Digital, you need to have very accurate in terms of very different kind of platforms, whether it is, kind of their visibility, as well as as per the advertising per se, whatever which is going to come. You need to be more investing now in today's scenario I'm talking about. They're investing a lot of money in research. I
Yeah.
think Nepa is in good business today.
Yeah, I wouldn't comment on that, but yes, the research is happening in OTT for sure.
Yeah, I was talking to Amay also from ENY. He will be
Oh,
taking.
okay. Interesting.
Yeah, you are part of with him in
Yes,
Yes.
the part
TAVI.
of the panel. Yeah.
So he would be doing one of the session. We would be doing one-to-one dialogue from ENY. I'm just giving an a highlight to other guys. I think the 21st or something we would be doing a session with ENY director, media and entertainment. He's heading. So he would be coming with a lot of stats and a lot of calculations, because research is again today is the biggest. If you, the media is one and the research is the other one. If you want to
Yeah.
make something, or whatever the brand, if you want to make it, so these two things are going playing big role, the media and the research. That is what we have put in our BRATS. Even though you're tech, even though you're a brand guy or you're advertising guy or a strategist guy, without research nothing happens. Because I strongly believe, because we've been doing research for last 3 years just to build up this platform.
Yeah. I think well said. Aim into that. Will mean more monies for us. So
Thank you so much, Esha. That's a lovely session. And any more
absolutely.
questions? Any more questions, or they can actually mail Ashwan. Who's that?
Now, Indrajit. Indrajit has a question.
You woke
Okay.
up, Indrajit. Come on, please come. This is the last question we're taking today, and we already taken about 1.5 hours. Thank you for your patience, Esha.
Ma'am, just wanted to know that there are certain markets where you cannot directly influence the consumer. Let's assume the healthcare or the pharmaceutical companies. There are two drugs, and we cannot directly ask the patient to take this one drug because both are of the
Yeah.
same.
Obviously. Yeah.
Yeah. So we
Yeah.
go and talk to the doctors mostly. They are the
Yes.
secondary consumers for us. So in that case, how we can influence the consumers or the buyers? So whether we can do, or because there are certain regulations are there which is understandable, but whether there is any role of consumer science into that.
Consumer science definitely comes into play, but maybe in this case, your direct respondents will not be. So there are different sectors in which you can't take responses from the consumer directly, but from the experts, as you already mentioned. So pharma industry, healthcare industry, specifically, like the ones that we are talking about, a lot of information and expert-led interviews happen to take, take decisions. And when it comes to the only place I think consumers directly play a role is in the field of digital healthcare in terms of the service side of things. So the service side of things, still you can take sense from the consumer. But when it comes to product testing and concept testing, no, that's not where consumer science, as the word says, doesn't hold a chance. It's a separate field altogether. Like pharma research, there are companies which specialize only in pharmaceutical researches. And they just look at, like those cohorts and experts in terms of interviewing and not necessarily the plain Jane methods. And yes, it comes with tons of best practices.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
It's a great session. Thanks, Esha. Any more questions, please? You can mail to Urvi at umbrellaedges.com. And can I, Esha, can you please stop sharing your screen?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, thank you. Can you all please switch on your cameras now so I can just take one screenshot? Indrajit, switch on, not switch off.
Oh wow, we had so many people on non-video mode. Great.
They all are so good looking. Why they're hiding, I don't know. Thank you, guys.
Hey, I see Nilesh from Nepa. Okay, I see a couple of people from Nepa as well. Okay.
The minute you said switch on, a lot of people said bye and went off.
That's why. Thank you, guys. 1 second. Yes. Superb. Thank you so much, guys. We will be putting up the review forms on the LinkedIn. Please share your reviews. Thank you so much. Thank you, Sakshi. Thank you, Yatin, Ekta, Anant, Tammy. Thank you all.
Thanks everyone. You guys were such a good audience.
Thanks so much, Isha. Thank you so much, Isha.
Thank you, ma'am.
Wonderful.
Thank you for organizing this. Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.
You can join us tomorrow for the next session.